So before you say anything, I am fully aware that I forgot one very, very important thing when it comes to making clothes, and that is ease. Ease is very important. Like, these pants, if it wasn't for the fact that I went on this cleanse and I went down by like an inch around my waist, like, these pants would not have fit. But they do fit now, and that was only after I had to go in, let out the seam a little bit, kind of try to fix up my zipper, but my zipper is still kind of like but yeah, they almost did not fit. And that's because I was on quarantine brain, and quarantine brain was not thinking logically or mathematically or spatially, whatever you want to call it. So I didn't know that, or I wasn't thinking about the fact that just because the hip area for the finished product says like 54 doesn't mean that my 52 bottom is going to fit in 54. Well, yeah, it does. I don't know. I just wasn't thinking. And if you don't know what ease is, basically ease is like when you measure your body and say like your waist is a 35. Well, the garment that you're in can't be a 35 because you need room to be able to bend and move, because we're humans. We're not like books, or I can't even say a bed sheet because your bed sheet has ease. But yeah, you're not like a book or something that has like wrapping where there's no like in between area, because it doesn't move, it's not flexible. So because you are a human being, you have flesh and movement. You need to be able to do things, and ease is basically the space between you and the garment and the amount of range of motion that it allows for you to have to be able to do your daily activities. So I did not take that into consideration when I made these. I think I did maybe this much, and had my brain been working correctly, I would have seen that I needed to add at least like another inch around like my bottom, because apparently now I have hips, because I went from I got hips out of nowhere. Just where that happened. I've always been like if an hourglass were broken in half and we're sitting on like a box, that's me. But now apparently I have hip a little bit, and that's really disturbing me with sewing. But also, I've never sewn, well, I have sewn a pair. I've never sewn a pair of pants to this length before in my life. So I think for the fact that these are like my first pair of pants that I like really took time and effort into, I think I did pretty damn good. Hold up. Let me hush and get back to the project. I used a gray suit fabric with zero stretch for these pants. I folded it right side together, ironed for good measure, and cut out all my pieces according to the pattern layout. The waistband will also need to be cut out in interfacing. So here was my fatal mistake. I cut off excess from the pattern, which resulted in an overfitted pair of pants, and I regret this, but I'm still going to show you how to make them. I'm just letting you know that's what happened. Start by stay stitching the upper edge of both the front and back pieces at 1/2 inch from the top in the direction of the crotch. For the dart, fold the fabric right sides together through the center of the dart. Matching the broken lines and dots, pin it together and sew along the broken line from the wide point to the actual, like the thinnest point. For the pleat, fold along the solid line, bringing it towards the broken lines, pin and then baste. For the zipper, with my iron on a low setting, I pressed the tape on the wrong side to help unroll some of the coils, but make sure you don't press the actual coils. On the outside, pin the zipper face down on the right side of the zipper opening of the pants. I marked 3/4 of an inch below the edge and 5/8 of an inch for the seam allowance, making sure that the zipper stops 3/4 of an inch below the edge like I marked here, and the coils fall along the seam lines that I marked. I hand stitched along the center of the tape. Then stitch the zipper in, stopping and batch stitching at the notch. Do the same thing to the other side of the zipper, and it helped me to close the zipper to help visualize where it needs to go. Pull the ends of the zipper away from the seam allowance. Pin the center back seam together below the zipper and position the zipper foot all the way to the left and start stitching the seam about 1/4 of an inch above the lowest stitch, slightly to the left. Follow along the seam allowance for about 3 inches. With right sides together, pin front to back at the inner leg seams, matching notches in small dots. You will have to stretch during a point in the inner thigh, so be careful not to overpin it between the spot where you have written stretch or where the pattern has stretch. But starting from the bottom, you want to stitch up the seam allowance, and then when you get to the stretch part, you're going to have to stretch it and then continue on and sew from there. So pin the top of the crotch, pin the bottom of the pants, and then pin up until you get to the stretch part, and then from there is where you're going to stretch when you sew. For the center seam, pin the center front seam and the remainder of the center back. Stitch connecting the previous stitching on the center back, and reinforce seam by stitching again over first stitching. For the pockets, with right sides together, pin pockets to the pants, matching your large dots and having the raw edges even. Then stitch in a 3/8 of an inch seam. Understitch your pocket by pressing the pocket away from the pants, along with the seam, making sure the seam allowance is against the pocket. Stitch through both the seam allowance and pocket, and do the same for your back and the other front pieces. With right sides together, pin the front to the back at the side seam, matching your large dots. Between those 2 dots, you're not going to sew because that's the opening for your pocket, so you want to be able to put your hand in there. Sew from the bottom to the large dot above your pants, and from the top large dot to the top edge of the pants. Pin and stitch the pocket as well, from the side seam to the upper edge. Then you're going to clip a little bit of your pants seam allowance as it shows here. I was really nervous, but yeah, this should kind of be self-explanatory. And then you're going to want to press that seam allowance open below the clip, and then press the pocket forward towards the front, and then base the upper edge that is still open. Base that top edge of the pocket to the pants, and then you're going to sew across that upper edge that is still open. So apply your interfacing to your waistband on the wrong side. So for the waistband, since I already altered the pants, it's not going to completely fit, but as long as you have your center back where it needs to be, things like your notches aren't, my notches at least, did not match, but as long as they were close enough, that's fine. It's, in the end, just a really large rectangle, and it's going to fit regardless. Just make sure that your center back is where it needs to be, and your center front is where it needs to be. Press under 3/8 of an inch on the long unnotched edge of the band. Pin pants to band, right sides together, matching the center front. And if yours looks like mine, don't worry about it as long as it's as close as possible, because in the end you really just want that extension that's going to hang it off on the back where your zipper is, that's really what you want, and that's where you're going to be able to put your closures into. So pin that together and then stitch. Trim the inside of that seam to about 1/4 of an inch, but don't go past the extension for the waistband. Press your band out away from the pants with the seam allowance and fold the band with right sides together. On the extension, I had extra length, so I measured from the garment to the center back marking. Took the measurement off the edge and moved the center back to the garment seam edge, as you can see here in blue. I then marked out the seam allowance so I wouldn't get confused. Turn under the left back end of the band diagonally and pin. It took many tries to get this right. Due to the excess, I continued to clip off small amounts of waistband until the diagonal fold here matched the picture. Stitch on the seam allowance on the right extension, but not into the garment edge. Stitch the left extension from the folded edge to the garment, making sure the diagonal fabric is cut, but don't go into the garment itself. Trim the edges and your corners, then flip the band right side out, pushing out corners and press. Flip your waistband right side out and press. For stitching the band, we are going to do what's called stitching in the ditch. Pin your band so the pressed edge is overlapping the seam on the inside by at least 1/4 of an inch. The band needs to be caught in the stitching when you sew on the seam. Flipping to the right side, stitch across the already existing seam between the fabric. Occasionally, check on the inside as you're sewing to make sure that your stitching is catching that band on the inside. And make sure that you are removing the pins as you go. For the band closure, I put them together to make sure they matched, which in the end didn't really help. And I did notice later that I had put them on incorrectly. Just put the hook on the end of the extension and it should be fine. Do as I say, not as I do. For hemming, I tried them on and had my mom help me measure where I wanted them to stop. I cut off some of the excess until it was around 3/4 to an inch longer than what I actually needed. I then narrow hemmed the edge and slip stitch, which was so new to me and something I've never tried. And it just made it look like there was invisible stitching, and it's beautiful. So after trying them on, I realized that I got a fat booty and I was worried about busting out. So I went back into the crotch seam and let it out a bit by sewing into the seam allowance by 1/4 of an inch and zigzag stitching the edge for a finish. So here's how they came out. Besides the obvious fit issues around my stomach, it's actually okay. And hey, I figured, let me show you my worst so when you sew them, you can see mistakes aren't the end of the world. But other than that, I think they can turn out really good. I am going to wear them to work. I feel extra fancy. I even pinned them at the bottom so that like, well not pinned, but like, words escape me. What's it called when you like stitch it but you can't see it for the cuff on the bottom? That's what I did. It's really great and I'm so excited because they look really good and I'm like, I'm gonna wear these. I'm gonna look cute. I'm gonna make a shirt to go with it. Yeah, I'm gonna get off here so I can stop feeling on my butt where there's a problem, but I'm not gonna fix it. Promise I'm not gonna fix it. And my next pair of pants, because this is my first pair, my next pair, they're gonna be a little bit better. I promise. And they might be shorts, if I'm honest. I don't have any shorts. I don't wear shorts. should make some shorts. Anyways, thank you folks for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Make sure that you tag me on Instagram so that I can see what you make and if you made it. If you have any polite and nice if you have any nice and polite constructive criticism or advice on how to help me in my endeavors, that'd be awesome, and you can put it down below. If you have any questions that I might be able to answer, you can put it down below too, or somebody else may be able to answer. Just make sure that you guys are kind and nice to each other, because there's no reason to be mean in this world. Life's too short. So anyways, I will see you folks later. Bye.